So now that we've covered getting to 50K a month and getting the foundation for building and scaling a sales team in place, let us talk about how we're going to solve the next problem, which is getting a talent acquisition system in place and having some reoccurring drivers in your vehicle. So level 2, the big constraint that we come across with the majority of the clients that we work with is they do not have a solid talent acquisition system, which is why their sales team isn't as big or isn't performing as well as they would like it to. And this problem comes in the form of many smaller problems that you've got to solve in order to achieve that greater outcome, eliminate that constraint, and get your sales team past 250K a month. So let's talk about those problems. Being first and foremost, the most overlooked is how do I maintain my level of activity from getting to 50K a month while adding all of the following activities into my schedule. Problem number 2, who do I hire? How do I compensate them? How do I get interviews with them? How do I hire them? How do I get them started? And lastly, how do I develop them and turn them into that top reoccurring producer I can rely on month over month? Now, if you notice some similarities there between that and client acquisition, then you'd be correct, because the skills that you acquire and that you stack while learning how to acquire clients are the exact same skills that you're going to use to acquire reps and any talent in your business for that matter. Now, what I like to compare recruiting to is the highest form of high ticket sales there is, because instead of convincing someone for $10,000, $20,000, $100,000, you're convincing someone to give you all of their time for an indefinite period of time, which is a massive ask. And for most people worth buying time from, probably more than $100,000. So it's about the highest form of sales that there is. Now, because of that, all of these fundamentals become increasingly important. And that is the main reason why you want to start with your warm market. People that are somewhat know you or have an idea of who you are and not completely cold strangers. Because when you're first starting to build your sales team, you're not going to have any proof of helping anyone like them, just like you did when you first started building your client acquisition system. So let me give you a brief story as to how I did this. And that was through a congregation that I had been a part of that I didn't necessarily have a ton of people. So let me give you a quick story as to what I did when I was first hiring my initial employees and had no credibility of, ever leading someone and helping them accomplish their career goals in the past. So I went to FSU, or Florida State University, and because of that, I didn't necessarily know, a ton of people that I thought would be good fits or that I wanted to work with. But what I did have is a congregation that I was a part of where people found a small level of trust in me, at the very least, because I had this mutual interest or shared experience with them. Now, I tell you that because a lot of people think they need, to have a massive social life, a massive career. And I tell you this because when I first got started, I didn't have, a massive network of people that I thought would make great, business partners or employees or people that could help me scale. All I had were certain experiences in my past that I could leverage into a small form of trust. And it might not have been the same as, knowing someone for 10 plus years, but it sure helped me acquire the right employees a lot quicker than if I had just gone completely cold. So what I did is I started with Florida State University, and from there, as I grew my credibility, I was able to start acquiring higher quality talent. So I could start going toward other marketing agencies. And we've hired. So I gained the leverage to go and start working with other marketing agencies and picking apart their talent and pulling those players over to work with me. And then from there, we built the leverage to be able to hire people that were completely cold, had no shared interests, no shared experiences, but we had tons of credibility of helping other people like them achieve their career goals, which now opens up a lot more opportunity for us to kind of hire wherever we want and whoever we want, but we didn't start that way. So oftentimes I get the excuse of, I don't know anybody or I don't have anyone that, could be a good fit for this role. And great, no problem. I guarantee you have some shared experiences in your life, unless you've been sheltered and living under a rock. where you can find people that will have some level of trust in you that you can start with. Now, getting to our first problem here. So maintaining the level of current key activities you have while adding the new steps in. So a lot of people at this point, they're gaining traction. You're starting to actually make a little bit of money in your pocket maybe. You want to take your foot off the gas. You feel like you've earned it. You figured it out. Let me hire some people, sit back and relax. Now, that is the opposite of what you want to do. Now is the time where you really want to double down on your intensity because you have not made it yet. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've seen successful sales leaders take that foot off the gas and start to have their own leaders and their own reps surpass them to the point where either A, that messes up their own compensation and their own structure of how much money they're making, or B, those reps outgrow them and leave them and go to someone else who can provide the support and the level of leadership that they're looking for. And I'll tell you that there is no worse feeling in the world than an employee outgrowing you, because that means that they did a better job growing that during that time period than you did as a leader, which is not great. So what you need to understand is how to delegate and how to prioritize. Now, your old priorities like admin work, appointment setting, outreach, the only thing besides sales calls themselves should entirely be delegated. You can delegate all these things to virtual assistants for $5 an hour and get great quality work, whether it's admin work, appointment setting, outreach. And pro tip, you might want to pay them as cheap as possible, but the more you pay, the better quality that you're going to get. And it really isn't that large of a difference in terms of the total cost at the end of the day. So now that you know, okay, I've got to delegate these things so I can clear up some time for some of the new things in my schedule. What are those new things? Well, first priority is now recruiting outreach and bringing producers in that can come and sell for you. That way you're not sitting on sales calls the rest of your life. And then from there, you're going to have to do interviews and you're going to have to train them. And that is a very important part, is the training. That is something that you would be surprised how many sales teams just throw reps out in the fire and say, sink or drown. Now, training is probably the most overlooked thing that I see at this stage. You'd be surprised how many companies just throw reps out there and say, you're either going to swim or you're going to sink. Now, that you know the priorities you have, here's an example of a daily schedule that you can use to accomplish all these things and have the time to do so effectively. And quite honestly, you should be working just as hard, if not even harder at this level to get to that next level the quickest. Because that is a point where, again, it's not advised, but it would be less detrimental to work less than at this current stage. Now, I always prioritize my schedule by the order of importance in my activities. So first thing I would do is recruiting outreach and making sure that we're bringing in new potential candidates. Then I'd make sure that we're hiring and training those candidates. And lastly, I would continue my sales calls because A, I probably still need money to help float the business and help fund these things at this time. But B, and just as importantly, I don't have any sales leaders yet. I don't have anybody that these reps can look to and know that, hey, this stuff works. This is how you sell it. This is someone crushing it in real time selling it. Now, from there, knowing how to delegate is quite simple and something that I think people, can overcomplicate. It really should just be a 3-step process every single time. I use the same process for anything that I'm delegating that isn't some specialized skill set where someone needs tons and tons of experience. So all you need to do is download Loom. This is what I'm recording this video on right now. This will allow you to film you doing any task, record your screen at the same time, and it'll even create an SOP for you afterwards. Now, what you want to do is send that Loom video in the SOP to an assistant that you hire, have them watch it. Then you want to get on a call with them, watch them do it, identify any areas of improvement, and show them how you would do it with those areas of improvement, and repeat that process. And then from there, all you need is for them to send you a report every week with the KPIs pertinent to, measuring their performance of completing that task or that assignment, and any challenges that they may have faced. And that's it. You do that, and I guarantee it might not be, the best possible way that you have offloaded the task, but you will have offloaded the task and it will be getting done effectively, or at least as well as you demonstrated to that assistant. Now, this question I get as much as any other question when it comes to recruiting, and it's, who do I hire? And typically people don't ask, who do I hire? But they're asking tons of surface level questions that indicate they don't know who they're looking for, which is the biggest mistake you can make hiring, because hiring the wrong person is extremely costly, and you are almost guaranteed to hire the wrong person if you don't know who you're looking for. So now, pro tip, hire experience over potential. They are much more likely to be successful in making money, especially quickly. And when you're beginning to scale a sales team, you don't want to have to wonder whether or not, pouring time into this person is going to be able to pan out and bring you the return you're hoping for. So again, bringing back the 4 things that Hormozi uses to identify a target audience. We've got massive pain, ability to succeed, growing market, and easy to target. Now, I switched out ability to succeed with purchasing power because they don't need to be able to buy anything. They need to be able to sell something. And that's really the only difference. Now, the massive pain that you're looking for when it comes to salespeople is typically one of 2 things. They either want to become financially successful and very financially successful at that, or they want to have more time freedom. And they may already be making good money, but they know, hey, if I could have a more flexible schedule because I'm able to have a higher output in my selling, then that's what I would like. And those are going to be the 2 best reps. Anybody that's looking to, make money quickly, anybody that's looking to make money with very, very little effort without putting in tons and tons of sacrifice up front to earn that leverage, these are not people that you want to hire. Now, again, ability to succeed is just experience, a track record of work ethic and achieving previous goals. This doesn't even necessarily have to be in sales. Obviously, the more relevant and the closer it is to what you're looking for, the higher likelihood that they're going to succeed. So, for example, if you do sales in this industry and you hire someone that does sales in this industry and has a track record of performing extremely well, they're probably going to be successful. But if you take that a level further to not in the industry, to a level further to not in sales, that ability to succeed goes less and less likely. So, easy way to target someone in massive pain. They're interested in sales, already in sales, or own a business. And sales and business owners go very hand in hand. The only kind of difference you're going to find with business owners is you're going to find people that are a little bit more passionate at times about what they're doing. And that can be, harder to convince them to drop that and come sell your product. Now, another note I will give you is you want to target those within 20 years down and 5 years up of your current age, and that is for multiple reasons. So if you are, let's say, an older man that's 45 years old, well, odds are, even if there were 65-year-olds that, wanted to come and work with you, it would be much more difficult to help them succeed, and it would be much harder to break their beliefs because you aren't in the same position that they are in and you don't have their perspective. You haven't walked in their shoes. Now, someone who's just a couple years older than you, sure, you'll get a lot more of them that believe it. But you mainly want to focus on those that are younger and those that feel that, hey, this person has more life experience, more perspective than me. They've been in my shoes, and if they have the ability to accomplish these things and succeed, as do I. Now, once you have an idea on the type of person that you're looking for and what their experiences are and how that's going to contribute to success in the role, you want to figure out what your culture is and how you identify those preferences. So the reason this is, I want to say, more important in sales than in any other department is because sales is very competitive and teams often feed off of each other. And if your team isn't feeding off one another and trying to do better than the other person or trying to uplift and help and become better as an overall unit, then now I want to say culture is more important in sales teams than it is in any other department of your business, because these people are going to be competing with each other on a day in and day out basis. That's why they create sales leaderboards. That's why there's sales competitions. And that is going to need to be a culture that promotes that competitiveness and fosters not only just competitiveness, but ideally collaboration. Now, for your engineering department, that's still necessary, but it might not be nearly as necessary. For your HR department, same goes. Sales department, you need your reps feeding off each other. that is what's going to create a team that is pushing each other to get better every single day. Now, you want to identify the traits, values, and beliefs of people that not only share those things that are going to contribute to more sales, but people that you want to surround yourself with. Because we use this example all the time. I would rather take a sales team of 5 guys that might be complete introverts and maybe not have the best social lives versus a sales team with 1 guy that is a former D1 athlete and has an amazing social life, 1 guy that has never left the library, 1 guy that comes from a, heavy metal band background that maybe is somewhat social within certain groups, but doesn't really fit in with kids that are too smart or kids that are, super athletic. This group isn't likely to jive well together. Even if they have the same beliefs, they're very different people and they're going to be very less likely to foster the collaboration you need to have them feed off of each other. Whereas the people that are all like-minded and very similar, they're going to collaborate very well together. Now, outside of that, there are other indicators that you can look for that, describe these things or these character traits or these values or beliefs that someone has. So, for example, if you're looking for people that are, super disciplined and they have the ability to control pretty much anything. So, and once you know the traits, the values, the beliefs, the type of people you want to surround yourself with, then you can identify different shared experiences or different indicators to find people that have those traits, values, and beliefs. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're looking for people that are very disciplined, above average discipline. Well, there are a couple different places you can find that, and you probably want to start somewhere where maybe you have some shared experience. So this could be, people that work out 5-7 days a week, work out, very hardcore. These could be people that are, former collegiate or professional athletes. This could be someone that was a former veteran. There are tons of different examples. Point being, identify the root and then identify indicators or experiences that label this person as this type of thing. Now, once you know who I'm going to hire, how do I compensate them? What am I going to do to get them to want to work for me? And the comp plan I always recommend when you first start building a sales team is commission only with some type of income guarantee or draw against future commissions. And the reason I recommend this is because when you're first getting started, you probably don't have the capital to come out of pocket on paying salary plus commission and attract high quality talent. And quite honestly, the highest quality talent is going to want commission only because that's where they're going to make the most money. Now, I'll give you an example of what an income guarantee or what a draw is. So an income guarantee could be something like, hey, if you work 40 hours a week and participate in all trainings, then I'll guarantee you make at least $2,000 in commissions every single month, or I'll split the difference with you out of my own pocket. A draw would be something like, hey, I'll give you $2,000 a month as a draw against the future sales or the future commissions that you make. And then when you make those sales or those commissions, that money will just go straight to me. Now, the reason this works better than anything else for starting to build and scale a sales team is because you're going to align intentions between both parties the best. They're going to have the opportunity cost of trying to work with you covered because they're making at least a base amount of money that they know will cover their expenses, and they get rewarded if they go above and beyond. And finally, it ensures that they're going to do the things that they need to do in order to earn that base level of income because they need to, or they will no longer qualify. Now, what that does is it takes some of the risk off them and it takes some of the risk off you, and it splits it right down the middle. And I would never suggest entirely eliminating the risk off them when you're first starting, because honestly, you don't know anything about building and scaling a sales team yet. And there's a lot of people that you wouldn't want to do that for. And until you know what that looks like, you will waste a lot of money paying people high salaries that should not be getting them. Now, from there, you've got your comp plan. You've got this unique result. Hey, I'm going to give you this much commission. I'm going to give you this guarantee or this draw against future commissions to ensure that, your lifestyle or your expenses are covered and that, you're not going to take any massive risks or be put in a terrible financial position if you come and try to work with it and help you build the sales. Now, the only exceptions to this rule is if you're selling to mid-market or enterprises, or you're selling something very, very high ticket, think 6, 7+ figures. And the reason that's so important is because they are not going to make money for a while, especially if you're selling to enterprises. You've got 6 to 24 month sales turnaround cycles. That person isn't going to be getting their first commission check for quite some time. So you kind of have to pay them a salary, or you're never going to have anyone that works. So lastly, on how do I compensate them? How do I figure out how much I can pay them? Well, here are a couple of equations that will help you figure that out. So what you need to understand are your average rep first 90-day production, your average rep first 90-day expenses, your average rep acquisition cost, and you can complete these equations. Now, how much should I pay them? Well, there are two things that you need to figure out. How much is it going to cost them to make them successful? And how much will they make you if they are successful? And once you know those two things, that difference times the amount of risk that you're willing to take is what you're going to be able to pay them. So let's say, for example, it cost me $10,000 in the first 3 months to make a rep successful, quote unquote. And successful means that they brought me $100,000 in revenue. Now, let's say my cost of goods sold on that is going to be $50,000. Then I've got $40,000 left over in profit. So that $40,000 is now what I have the ability to pay them. But obviously, not every rep is going to be successful. So you want to account for that risk that you are taking in there, plus any advertising costs or additional expenses. Now, after I know who I'm hiring, how I'm going to pay them, how do I get interviews with them? So the first thing that you want to do when you're scaling a sales team is start with an outbound or headhunting acquisition strategy. This is the only channel you want to use. You don't want to use Facebook ads, job boards, none of it. Just purely outbound and headhunting. The reason why is it's going to be the cheapest and the easiest way for you to get in front of those experienced people that you need to bring onto the team. Now, how you do this is simply the rule of 100. Once again, send 100+ messages a day to your niche, to your target audience. And how you can find these pages is the same as before. Let's say your niche is, all right, I'm in, insurance sales. If I want to go and start with people that are going to be the most likely to be successful, I can start with other insurance salespeople. And then from there, you can move to people that are local within sales, and then so on and so forth. But once you know your niche, you identify 100 social media pages where you can find them, develop your messaging, same as you did before, and use the 4 pillars of lead nurture, same as you did before, to get these interviews. Now here are some examples of some of the scripts that we use. This is an example from someone in insurance recruiting someone else in insurance. Now, this is an example that we use to actually convert a prospect for another client into not only an interview, but eventually a producer. And this is someone from insurance recruiting someone else in insurance. So this would be an example of recruiting someone within your industry. Now, once I know how to, get interviews, how can I maximize the number and the quality of interviews that I'm getting? Well, these are the priorities that we implement to help clients do more and do better, which is what your primary focus should be at this time. Now, a better niche is going to make you more money because people that are going to be more likely to be successful and bring you more revenue potential, in turn, make you more money. So let's say, for example, that I wasn't able to make it work within my industry before because I didn't have maybe enough credibility or enough influence, and I started outside my industry. Well, now I can go back to inside my industry. Now, better advertising in general is going to help you do this. So better targeting, better delivery, better scripts, better offers. These things will all bring you more and higher quality interviews. More outbound, so just simply more channels, more social media accounts, more areas. Then you've got more outbound, which is simply put just more channels, so different, social media platforms, and then more accounts, which is just load up the number of accounts that we're using on this one platform. Then you've got better and more follow-up, so better follow-up scripts, different ways of following up, more times that you follow up, and lastly, a better online presence. Now, this could be better content, better credibility, more credibility, but overall, more influence online to attract this ideal person. Now, from there, you've got to make yourself and your offer. Now, one action step that you want to complete before you go and start this outreach is making yourself and your offer appear credible. Because if I tell you, hey, I can help you go and make a ton of money in sales if you come work for me, well, why the heck should they believe you unless you give them a reason to? So these are the things that we do to give reasons for our clients to be able to attract the talent that they want to attract. So an official company website is a must, but an ideal is a landing page for career opportunities. Now, optimizing your social media profiles with clear credibility is an absolute must. If someone doesn't land on your page and immediately think, wow, I could learn from this guy, you're fighting an uphill battle. Which leads to the next point, in becoming an industry authority in your niche. If you just do that, you're gonna have all the recruits in the world reaching out to you. Now, you also need valuable success stories and stats that prove your sales team performs higher than others. For example, I've got a client that I was talking to earlier who the 50th best person on their sales team deposited $13,000 in commissions last month, which proves that, hey, even if you're the 50th best, which is mediocre out of a 100-person organization, you're still going to make more money than the vast majority of people in the world ever will. Now, something most people overlook drastically is making their environment work for them and not against them. So your Zoom background, your office, anywhere where you're going to hold an interview, it better look like you're successful. Because if you're doing it in a Harry Potter bedroom, you're not going to get people that really believe you can help. Now, the final two are showing your product's sellability and how easy it is to sell your products to consumers, and your training and support, which is very important for you to be able to show them we have the processes in place to make you successful. So here's a client example of a career landing page and optimized social media profiles that do just that. Now, quality of proof is something that people drastically ignore. Proof exists on a spectrum. It's not whether or not I have proof, it's how good is my proof. And lawyers understand that better than anybody. So here are what I call the 4 quadrants of proof in the things that are going to create higher quality proof. So you have the strength of the proof itself. Now, strength of proof would be how strong is the indication that this piece of evidence is proving this point. So for example, if you have a 10,000 person survey versus a 100 person survey, the 10,000 person survey is probably going to be stronger. Now, frequency or volume of proof differs because it's the number of surveys that you have. Where frequency or volume of proof differs is it's not associating with the quality of the evidence, but the amassed volume of the evidence. Format of proof is the format of the evidence. In-person proof is stronger than online proof. Video proof is stronger than picture proof. And lastly, you have recency of proof. And I know this as a big-time golfer. Recency of proof is extremely meaningful. Someone saying that the course was in good conditions 2 days ago is much different than someone saying the course was in good conditions 2 years ago. So now that I know how to get interviews with them, what do I say? How do I hire? And the biggest pro tip I've learned recruiting for my own company particularly is using Mark Zuckerberg's test to remove emotions. Would I want to work for this person? And if the answer is no, don't hire. And if you find yourself saying no all too often and kind of being desperate in your hiring, what I would suggest you focus on is maximize the number of opportunities that you have. Because it is impossible to fail in sales and recruiting if you have unlimited opportunities and you're doing tons of them every single day. You're not gonna have any desperation because, quite frankly, I don't need any one of you opportunities to accomplish my goal. I'm gonna find someone, because even a broken clock strikes right twice. Now, the exact framework we use to help our clients convert interviews into their ideal hires is very similar to the closer framework, but more built toward recruiting. And we actually call it recruit. So the similarities are going to be in everything up until the very end, where you understand. And this is very, very important, because when you're making sales, let's face it, a lot of people say, I only work with, this type of person, or I only work with, this caliber of person. But a lot of people don't end up doing that. But this is way more important when it comes to the employees that you have than just your clients, which is honestly extremely important and not something to overlook. But if you overlook this with your employees, well, you're not going to grow. So you want to, again, why are you here? What have you tried to do to accomplish or solve this problem before? What's that ideal solution look like? Okay, so you've done this, this, and this. This is what you tried. This is your ideal solution. This is a point now where I want to understand whether or not I think you'd be a good fit for me, rather than you just being a good fit for this opportunity. And then the same goes in overcoming objections and reinforcing their decision to work with you. And the exact layout or structure of this goes: interview 1, review, evaluate, clarify; interview 2, reflect, understand, offer; interview 3, tie down. Now, how do I make an irresistible offer or an irresistible EVP, employee value proposition? So these are the basics. You've got unique result, which is what dream outcome can you provide them that no one else can. So for example, I'll help you create a $10K per month, 100% passive income within the next 24 months through our Junior Broker Accelerator program, while ensuring you take home at least $5K a month in the meantime while you're trying to get there. That's something that I don't know if any sales organization's offering. If I was a sales organization, that would be a fantastic offer, and any of you feel free to steal it. Now, perceived likelihood or job security. This is different than when you're selling customers, because there are two sides of this. If you're salaried, it's less so, okay, am I going to make sales? And it's more so, how secure is this job? Am I going to get laid off? And if you're commission only, then it's much more, okay, how likely am I to make sales? So you need to understand why your ideal rep is going to be successful and how you're going to ensure they achieve that outcome they are looking for. Which, the best way to do this is show them the process and how they're going to do it, rather than tell them. Then you have the energy and effort required in order to be successful. I never negotiate on a minimum of 40 plus hours a week and 150 plus unique dials per day, because unless you're, super experienced salespeople entering like a closer role or something that is super high leverage, you don't have the leverage to negotiate on the energy and effort you put in. You need to worry on mastering your craft and doing everything in your power to ensure your success. Because why would I do it if you don't care about your success just as much as I do? And lastly, time delay. This is something you don't want to negotiate on again. And at minimum, I always say, hey, if you're going to do this, you're going to commit to this for at least the next year, because if you can't do that, don't even worry about it. And the reason is because if someone isn't bought into the long-term vision and the process you're going to take to help them achieve it, then all you're selling them on is just emotion, and emotions fade, whereas logic stays. Now, the toughest part about crafting an employee value proposition for sales positions in particular is you can't negotiate or lower the bottom half of this equation, because you will drastically lower your success and retention rates. So you have to get really, really good at your unique result, your perceived likelihood, and the other variables of the equation, which are risk, bonuses, scarcity, and the name. Now, the one that's most often overlooked is the name. Laugh at it all you want. The job title you use is going to play a significant role in whether or not you're going to attract the person that you're looking for. And that's because people that consider themselves a high quality talent probably want some status with the role that they're in. And if you call them a bottom feeder, for lack of a better example, they're not going to get much status from that. But if you call them a enterprise consultant, well, that has a much better ring to it. Now, the other levers are fairly self-explanatory, but what do they look like? Eliminating risk means that draw or that commission guarantee that I discussed before. There are other ways you can do it as well. Like, for example, paying for living expenses. There are all different types of things. The list is endless. I'm sure I haven't even thought of all of them. But the two that I always use the most are draw or commission guarantee. Bonuses. So these could be anything. These could be financial bonuses. These could be educational bonuses, sales enablement. This could be entertainment bonuses, traveling. This could be relationship bonuses, networking, health bonuses. We've got a gym in our office. We've got access to a massage, whatever. And scarcity. This is the one that people use the worst, particularly with roles that are ongoing because, hey, we have an ongoing need. There isn't really a certain limit to the number of people that we can hire. And it's true and not true. Over a long enough time horizon, yes, but over this next month, I know that there's a limit in terms of people that you could onboard. You can't onboard 1 million people, can you? Okay, so what's the max number? And you want to leverage that number when you are doing your interviews. Because while this may be an ongoing role and there may be positions open in the future, we get so much inbound interest every month that I can't guarantee our wait list isn't just going to continue to increase. So the longer you decide to think about whether or not this is going to be the right career move for you, the longer that wait list is likely to get and make it less likely that you're ever going to be able to even start. Now, biggest pro tip I can give you here is leads. Salespeople, they know they're lead fiends. They are hungry for leads. Leads are crack to a salesperson. How you plan to get them leads is the biggest question you need to answer, and how quality of those leads is not something to ignore as well. Now, overcoming objections, you're going to get the same 3 objections that you get when trying to sell anything else in life. Decision maker, they don't see the value, or delay. Overcome them the exact same way that you would if you were doing sales. And here are some examples. So let's say decision maker. Well, I've got to talk to my wife about this because this would be a big move for us. And I don't know if she's going to be on board with it because it does sound kind of risky and it could affect our lifestyle. Let me cut you off. Now, you can either let your dreams die, which is becoming extremely successful, having the time freedom for your family, or the dreams of those around you, which is your wife being secure, knowing that her lifestyle in the immediate future is going to be taken care of. And quite frankly, if you're not willing to choose the first option, then I don't want you on my team anyways, because I want people that are willing to die to accomplish their dreams. Effort to value. Okay, great. If I were to pay you this amount that we've talked about you being able to earn on a salary, all you do is just show up for 40 plus hours a week, would you do it? If the answer is yes, then okay, why don't you believe that you're gonna accomplish that? If the answer is no, then it's a value proposition or an ideal profile problem. You got someone that's too big for you, or your offer sucks and you can't make them enough money and you need to go back to level 1. And lastly is delay. All right, if the timing was perfect, if all conditions were perfect, would you start this today? And if the answer is yes, okay, well, why isn't it perfect? If the answer is no, okay, well then again, we're back to the value problem. From there, you need to complete an onboarding meeting. And what I always suggest is if you're doing commission only, you get your reps to sign an independent contractor agreement that outlines any guaranteed pays, any draws, as well as their comp plan. And what this does is it makes it real for that person, because it's easy to say yes to a job on the spot. Then when you think about it and go, oh crap, I'm not going to get paid until I actually earn it, you get a lot of people that back out. But if they're forced to confront that decision on the spot, then it allows you to understand whether or not they're going to be a good fit or if they're not. And on that onboarding call, the most important thing you do is set clear expectations for next steps. Because if someone doesn't have that confidence instilled in them that you know what you're doing to help them get to where they want to go, they're not going to show up. After next steps, you want to get into how to prep for any licenses they might need for this role, if any, priorities in their training schedule, And lastly, give them a quick win to reinforce that decision to work with you. This could be adding them to a group chat, a leaderboard, giving them merch, you name it. Now, how do I get them started? Well, the 4 keys of rep retention we use are boot camps, one-on-ones, BODs and EODs, and reporting. So, orientation. Well, you should do a 2-day orientation or boot camp that spends the first day training on the product and audience knowledge. What do I sell? Who do I sell it to? And a second day training on the rest of the key operating procedures they need. First 5 clients, creating sales ops, closing sales ops, and creating profit and reporting. Once they know how to do those things, you can help them execute that first 5 clients framework. And if they aren't able to do it by the end of the week 2, I would drop them. Unless, again, your enterprise or very, very high ticket. From there, during that 2-week boot camp, you should be role-playing daily with them, reviewing their outreach, identifying areas of improvement, listening to their sales call recordings on 2x speed, and identifying areas of improvement, and going over those with them every single day. Pro tip, want to do these 2 things to help them get much better, much quicker. So first, being conviction. Conviction comes from confidence in what you're talking about, what you're selling, etc. If someone doesn't have confidence in what they're selling, that's going to come across in the sales call. The prospect is going to perceive less likelihood they'll be successful, less closes. Boom. If your sales rep is extremely confident and convicted, that's going to come across. The person on the other side of it is going to feel that. They're going to believe it. More sales, yeah. Now, bathing in good sales is what a lot of people ignore. Your reps in that first 2 weeks need to be watching good sales calls for at least 1 hour every single day. And this is because if they're not seeing other people win, less belief, and if they're not seeing the tactics used to overcome the problems or the objections they're facing, well, it's going to make it much harder for you to diagnose them one by one rather than empowering the rep to do that themselves. Now, how do I train someone? How do I, literally, what do I do? Well, as we talked about in delegating earlier, this is the exact framework we use every single time. Tell, show, watch, fix, repeat. Never gets it wrong. If you tell someone and then you show them, you watch them do it, you fix them, and then you start from the top, eventually they're going to do it right. Now, how well someone learns and their ability to learn is determined by the number of times that it takes them to get through that cycle. And if it takes someone too many times, cut your losses. From there, once you've gotten through that boot camp, you want to get into completing bi-weekly one-on-ones. And this goes over the same thing you were doing in your daily one-on-ones, just on an every other week basis, because they've now learned and accomplished the basics. And what you can start to do on these one-on-ones is, after they've developed a baseline performance and baseline benchmarks, you can identify positive or negative discrepancies to help them figure out what they need to do to get better. So what we use is something called the 5 Whys, which was actually invented by the Toyota car company. And they would use this inside their factories to spot the root of problems. So let's walk through an example in sales. Sales rep is making no sales and is poor. Well, why not? Well, I don't have enough opportunities. Well, why don't you have enough opportunities? Well, I'm not spending enough time creating them. Why aren't you spending enough time creating them? Well, I'm not too good at focusing, blah, 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 whatever excuse. Okay, so you lack the skill or the character trait to focus and be a focused person. So that is what I need to help you fix. Because if we fix that, then you're going to create the opportunities that you need to create, and you're going to make the sales because you've got the opportunities. And what this is diagnosing people versus process problems. And this is the problem process people matrix. I came up with this. I don't know if there's anything else like this out there, probably, but this is what I use. So whenever a problem occurs, first thing you want to do is you want to evaluate the process. What in our process would have eliminated this problem from being a problem to begin with? So take, for example, this same one. Well, if we were proactively spotting if our reps were creating enough opportunities, or if we were proactively spotting if our reps were focused, then we would be able to solve that problem on the spot and be able to solve it before it ever became an issue. So for example, if you evaluate their focus during their boot camp, well, you can eliminate that from ever being an issue after the boot camp. And let's take an example completely outside of sales to make sure you really get it. So take Toyota, for example. Let's say, okay, this conveyor belt stopped working. Why? Okay, well, the electrical outlet is no longer functioning. Why? Okay, well, it looks like there's actually a leak inside the factory that is causing the electricity malfunction. Okay, why is there a leak? Well, it looks like our roof hasn't been inspected in this long and it needs to be replaced. Boom, system solved that. Let's get the roof inspected ever so often. Let's say it's this interval, make sure that it's completely up to standard and that this doesn't ever happen again. And on top of that, maybe we even want to reinforce the roof or, our electrical circuits. I don't know how electricity works, but whatever is going to make sure that it's protected in the event that there isn't. Now, let's say that the process was perfect. Well, then the only thing left is that it was the person that didn't follow the process correctly. And this is something that you also want to fix, not just with evaluating if this is the right person or not, but your process for picking the right person. Because how did I put a person in this position to begin with that made this mistake and didn't follow this process correctly? So that's the matrix I walk through to ensure that we're diagnosing the problem correctly and that we are solving it at its root, because it can get very confusing and very emotional when you have, people process problems and you don't know, okay, am I expecting too much? Am I being too hard? Are my standards too high? Or did I just not outline or give the proper instructions? This removes all of that and makes it a logical process. Now, what is a BOD and an EOD? So BOD stands for beginning of day, EOD end of day. These meetings for sales teams are extremely important because it gets everyone in the A, mindset to go out and be successful that day, but B, gets them prepared through role play in being warmed up, for lack of a better term, which in all honesty for very experienced salespeople isn't, from what I've seen, a big deal. But for those that are just beginning, to hop on your first call of the day completely cold is typically not the best idea. And lastly, it's there to motivate, setting individual and group targets to get everyone excited about what they're going to go out and accomplish that day. At the end of the day, you want to go and review these KPIs and this team's performance to identify any, again, discrepancies to see if, there are any problems that need to be solved, but to reward those that performed very well and met their goals. Because people don't just like to be, and pro tip here, you want to personalize the reward to whatever the rep wants. Some reps want to make more money, some of them want more status, some of them want more influence, some of them want more time, more knowledge, list goes on. But whatever that person wants and whatever motivates them is what you want to use. Because you'd be surprised how many people would do this for, let's say, for example, more time back in their day versus more money. And lastly, you want to check in to see if anyone had or has any challenges that haven't gone solved, just to make sure that they don't go into the next day with those challenges. Now, on top of, your usual rewarding systems, most sales organizations, and yours, should have a clear promotional chart to reward and reinforce progression. Now, where a lot of sales organizations can mess this up is doing something called compression, which what that means is to compress the amount or the spread or the really any variable to a point where it is become so diluted or so stressed that it is no longer bringing the same returns or the same output. So, for example, if you stay under certain percentages at all times, no matter what, for the end of time and never change those percentages, you will avoid that compression, because at no point will those percentages ever change and the percentages be diluted to where they are no longer existent. But if you, let's say, for example, raise your compensation structure and raise or increase your promotional chart to stay competitive within the market, which a lot of people may think is a good idea, what you're going to end up doing is compressing that spread that was created with your existing team. So if you want to raise one person you've got to raise the promotional chart for everybody, those that are already active. So for example, if you have a 35% spread after all expenses, after everything, and you give up an extra 5 points this year to remain more competitive in your hiring, 5 points next year, 5 points the following year, eventually you're going to eliminate that spread entirely to where you no longer make money, and the reps below you stop making money as well because they're doing the same exact thing with the reps on their teams. So that's what you don't want to do. Whenever it comes to remaining competitive with your value proposition, do not touch your percentages. Do not touch the comp plan. Touch everything else but that. Now, there are two types of spreads I see within sales organizations, the premium and the economy spread. So premium is typically less overall total reps and more profit per rep. And the economy would be many, many reps with low profits per rep. Now, the only time we're making less per rep is a tactical or strategic advantage is when you have a 100x competitive advantage in delivery of rep performance, meaning cost to acquire a rep and cost to ramp up a rep. If you do not have that, then you're almost always going to make less money than if you were to just have a higher spread or a premium spread. So I never suggest clients to lean towards that unless they've got some crazy competitive advantage that they tell me about. And even then I'm hesitant because if it's literally not 100 times better, you're gonna make less money. And the reason that is because you can only hire so many people. Think about it. The number of people in the world is quite literally capped. There's like 7 billion people. The amount of money in the world is not only a much larger number, but is also infinite, for lack of a better terms, because they're constantly printing more. And with that, it's essentially, now the reason being you make more profit per rep with a higher spread is because it is much easier to make more money off of a rep and help them make more money for the organization than it is to hire more reps. And not only is it easier, but it's a lot cheaper as well. And the same goes for your client acquisition. It's, I believe, 3 times cheaper to retain a customer than it is to acquire a new customer on average. And that same concept applies when it comes to your internal team and your employees. Now, not only that, but having many reps means many of them are unsuccessful for the most time. And with many unsuccessful employees that have bad experiences, you're eventually going to hurt your brand image and make it very, very difficult to continue doing what you're doing and eventually die. So in short, it's almost always better to have more profit per rep than it is to have more reps. Now, how do I develop that winning culture that we talked about earlier? The competitive spirit, team members that not only compete with each other, but collaborate to help each other get better. 3 things we do. Have a visual and up-to-date leaderboard at all times. Set clear routine goals with competition and some sort of bonus, and cut the bottom 10% of performers every quarter. The last one is the one that I get the most pushback on from clients. And quite frankly, I don't understand why. Because over a quarter, you're likely going to have a good amount of churn from your sales reps anyways. For some organizations, it could be 5%. For some, it could be 10, 20, so on and so forth. So if you account for that before the fact and understand that, hey, 10 to 20% of these people long-term aren't going to be good fits anyways, why keep them around when it does nothing for you tactically except make you a very small and measly amount of money? But B, they are hurting everyone else on the team because they think that you're going to tolerate and that you're going to accept that mediocrity or that, even worse, for poor performance. So if you fix those problems proactively, people will respect you more for it and they will do better. Now, the 2 other pro tips I would give you here are using a performance improvement plan whenever someone misses quota or their benchmark more than 2 months straight. What that would do is put them back through a boot camp, and if they are able to meet quota from there, great. If not, cut. Lastly, for a lot of you, you already have existing sales teams and you don't have the culture that you want. So how do I set new standards? Well, it's a 2-step simple process that is very easily set, but is very painful to do. Reset clear expectations that they can complete or get fired and allow them to make the decision for themselves. So figure out, okay, these are our new standards. You can follow those or don't have to. But if you're not going to follow them, take your stuff with you, because we want people that are going to live up to this standard that we put out there. And if that's not you, I don't have any hard feelings, but you're not for this team. Now, when you are building this sales team, you need to be tracking not only individual performance and commissions, but team performance. And how you can do this simply is have your reps track the KPIs you used to previously in level 1, and you track the team KPIs through a CRM or spreadsheet. Now, what KPIs should you be measuring for your team? There are 2 that we look at. One is producer lifetime gross profit. So this is the effectiveness of your sales team as a whole. Now, the reason this measures the effectiveness of your sales team is it shows you how much money you're going to make per individual sales rep over the course of their lifetime. How you calculate that is your hire and your producer acquisition cost, your average producer lifetime in a number of months, and your average profit per producer per month. The other KPI we look at is producer 90 days profit. And this measures the effectiveness of your hiring and your ramp-up system. What you need to track here are your new hire expenses, your new hire production rate, your average new producer revenue, and your new producer expenses. Now, what should my KPIs look like? Unfortunately, this is way too industry dependent to really give you an accurate idea. So what I'll give you are rules of thumb. And honestly, there's only one that really matters. And that is that your average rep 90 days profit, is it even? And your producer lifetime gross profit is 3 times greater than your producer acquisition cost. So what does that mean? That means I will make 3 times more in bottom line profit than it costs me to acquire a new salesperson. So this means I am never going to come to a point where I need funding or I need capital to help scale my team, because I am self-funded by the sales reps I hire. When I hire them, I'm going to make 3 times more than what they cost me to hire, which now makes your constraint just getting leaders in place quick enough, because you've got an unlimited pool of reps to hire. Now, let's recap everything you need to do in level 2 to get to $250K a month and have that high quality talent acquisition system that gets you to the next level. So you need your defined ideal rep, compensation plan, and employee value proposition. You need to have gotten your first 5 reps using the first 5 rep framework. You need to get candidates using the rule of 100, your niche in employee branding. You need to get hiring opportunities using the 4 pillars of lead nurture, get hires themselves through the recruit framework and overcome objections, and get production through the 4 Ps of rep retention.